Hello, YouTube, and welcome to Rhett with Rolling Forward. Just in the previous video, I spoke about life after injury, and my life did not end uh, back in the desert when I broke my neck and became paralyzed. Um, my lifestyle changed, most assuredly, but my life didn't. And I went forward with much joy and happiness in my life, as well as the trials and tribulations that come from anyone's life. I want to speak a little bit now of uh, the place of people with disabilities in our culture. People with disabilities are noticed at the mall, often stared at, often giggled at, sometimes ridiculed, um, can sometimes make other people ill at ease. That was what I have never quite figured out, but I know it to be true. So some people are ill at ease merely because of my presence. Um, I find that one a little weird, but it's real. I'm going to talk about my experiences prior to becoming disabled, my experiences uh, seeing, meeting, knowing people who were disabled. My experiences were quite limited, as probably most of yours are too. Those of you who are not disabled and do not have a family member or close friend who is disabled, your experience is probably quite limited uh, with that portion of our population. Um, I was a high school jock prior to my injury, um, confident, popular. Um, life was good. High school was good. Um, and who had I met just by chance of living? Well, one time when it was my last year in Little League, so I was probably 12. I think I had just turned 12. Some old family friends came to visit, and they had two children. Um, One of their children was a boy. At that time, I was probably uh, 12 or 13, and he was probably uh, 18 or 19. Seems to me he had just started college, and he had polio when he was quite young. Um, and as a result of that, he uh, could breathe with difficulty. When he slept with a device which kind of pushed on his stomach and helped him breathe. Um, he could walk with difficulty with a big and obvious limp. His upper body was very, very thin and slight, and his arms were completely paralyzed. They literally hung straight down from his shoulders, and each breath he took was an obvious effort. Um, his sister had Down syndrome, an extreme case, and I can clearly remember going to the beach and taking their family. I was a beach kid. I was a surfer, so the beach was very familiar to me, very comfortable to me. They were from, um, I think, Iowa, so the beach was not at all familiar to them. And I can remember walking down the sand and thinking, man, I'm with these weirdos, and all the people on the beach are looking at us. I was very aware of it. Um, I knew that courtesy and respect was expected of me, and I had no reason not to offer complete courtesy and respect to these people. They were different, for darn sure, um, but uh, the boy who would have been what, probably 6 or 7 years older than I. He was smart, good conversationalist. Uh, his brain was there, and so he was a regular guy, except he looked pretty weird. I can remember um, my father, his father, longtime friends with my parents, and him, Doug was the son. We were going to go to a Dodger game, and we drove on the freeway, and I had binoculars with me. And I was, of course, looking at cars, looking at buildings, looking at the back of my dad's head with the binoculars, like a kid would do. And I remember looking over to him. The two of us kids were in the back seat. And I said, "Hey, you want to look through the binoculars?" And he said, "Oh, no, thanks, I'm okay." And I thought, well, his arms are paralyzed. So I said to him, "I can hold them up in front of your eyes if you want." And he nicely said, "That's cool, man, thanks." And it was a kind of a normal exchange over a somewhat atypical situation, but I felt I felt as though I had asked, and it was probably an okay thing to do. We enjoyed the game, and went home later. Um, the daughter, who was just slightly older than I, was very difficult to communicate with. Was very difficult to communicate. She, was profoundly disabled with her Down syndrome. But she was very friendly, very enthusiastic, and a positive person. And whereas she was okay to hang around, she still looked kind of weird. And, I'm not exceptionally proud of my thoughts in that situation, but uh, acting out of, you know, ignorance and no experience, I thought I did okay, although I was very aware of the differences. It so happened that um, during the course of their visit, it was uh, All-Star time in Little League, and uh, in my Little League, the All-Stars were to be picked on this particular weekend, and so we went to the Little League field. It was very crowded. Um, you know, everyone who could show up wanted to go and watch their kids or their neighbors' kids. And walking up, I was in my uniform. My parents, probably my sister, and their parents, and the two kids. I can remember walking up and thinking, man, all these people are going to be looking at us. What does that mean for me or to me? I can remember one of my friends on my team asking me, who are those guys? And I said, longtime family friends, and kind of, it never went anywhere, but, they were noticed. They stood out clearly and kind of with something of a negative context. Another person I knew was a girl in my confirmation class, and she was born with basically no legs, or from mid-thigh down there were no legs. She was very personable and outgoing. She was physically able to get around. She had a wheelchair, but once in a car, she would, move around the vehicle, and she was a good role model for me to look back upon, in fact. But her power of personality kind of broke down a lot of barriers once once someone interacted with her. Um, so that was a positive uh, event for me looking back. And she was someone who was, nearly a friend at the time and was undoubtedly the closest I ever got with someone who was disabled prior to my own disability. After my injury, while still in the hospital initially, I had a lot of visitors. I was fortunate to have a good number of good friends from school, um, sometimes their parents, um, and they would visit me in the hospital, often with encouragement, often with, "You'll walk out of here, don't worry. You'll beat this, Rhett, don't worry." And at the beginning, I mostly said, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, we'll see." Um, but I knew within, within hours really, the night of the first day, I knew that I had broken my neck, injured my spinal cord, and was not going to be walking. I didn't say it out loud, but I knew it. I remember the first time I gave a more truthful response when a friend, a girl, came to visit me in the hospital, and she and I had snow skied together a number of times. And to be encouraging, she said, "Boy, I can't wait for you to get out of here so we can go skiing again together." And I said, "I'm not going to be skiing ever." And I said it in a nice way so as not to scold her. I did not want to embarrass her or make her regret saying such a thing, but rather I wanted to inform her of, that's a nice thought and a nice dream, but it ain't going to happen. And she was a little bit surprised that I said such a thing, and we never pursued that conversation subsequently to that. But I can remember that day as the first time I verbalized to someone else that I believed I was never going to walk again. I thought it was good to face and accept reality, and that was the reality I believed was mine, and I believe it was correct. Um, so here I have visiting me regularly, fortunately for me, uh, a support system. They were doing their best to encourage me. I received hundreds and hundreds of get well cards uh, giving me encouragement. It was a wonderful show of support. When I was in the hospital, I moved from ICU finally down to a lower level of care. They called it extended care in that hospital. And we are definitely going to speak more about that room and that situation in more detail in some upcoming videos. But there were two guys in this room. One of them, a man who was a paraplegic due to a spinal cord injury, and a young 20-something-year-old guy who had been disabled since birth. Perhaps it was muscular dystrophy or a related kind of condition, I'm not sure. But they were both long-term and, quote, experienced people with disabilities. Um, I spent many, many days, um, talking with them, not really specifically about disability and living, but just about life. Well, in our new circle of friends, in my new social group, in my new support group, uh, disability was a part of life, but it was a part of life. It was not a part of giving up It was not an end of life, but how to live a life with a disability. And so I was transitioning between my previous group of active, able-bodied people to active, disabled people. Uh, Active, involved in life and the world. Um, I think my point here was beginning the transition, and this is kind of a central part of this video series, I hope, transitioning from being an active person with no disability to becoming a profoundly disabled person. I was young, younger than many, not younger than all, of course, but I had a big change to adapt to and incorporate into my life. Or, of course, I could simply give up and die. Um, I had many thoughts about that. Um, but as I will describe again in subsequent videos, I, over time, realized that there was more life possible. There was a life possible. And with the good fortune of having support, I was able to make that adjustment and live a life that included happiness, included joy, included family. I have grown children. I have a wife. Um, I'm pretty happy. I did okay. And that's the point of this entire series as well. You all can do it. Um, Believe in yourself, and you will do it. And I'll stop on that note right now. I'll pick up many of these strands in the future. Please let me know which ones you are particularly interested in. And on that note, I will say, please click subscribe. Please click a like. Thank you for watching. And YouTube, ciao.